She started as a nanny, but stole the boss's heart. He was rich, powerful, and completely off-limits to her. Love bloomed where they least expected it, and without control. Now he'll do anything to have her all to himself. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. The tiny apartment trembled with each passing subway train. Emma observed the cracks in the wall expand imperceptibly, while her younger sister slept on the sofa bed, hugging her school books. The noise of the city entered through the poorly sealed window, along with the smell of oil from the auto shop on the ground floor. Another month, another late rent payment. Careful not to wake Amy, Emma took the crumpled newspaper from her bag. The classified ad circled in red caught attention. Looking for full-time nanny, experience with children, above market salary, optional residence. She read the ad for the 10th time that day, her hands trembling slightly. The salary offered was 3 times higher than her current job as a waitress. Emma looked again at her sister. Amy was only 15 and had a bright future ahead of her, if she could stay in the private school where she had won a scholarship. Since their parents died in an accident 2 years ago, Emma gave up everything, including her education degree, to care for her sister. But now, with bills piling up, she knew she needed to make a difficult decision. The interview would be in less than an hour, in the penthouse of one of the most luxurious buildings in New York. Emma adjusted for the last time the only formal dress she owned, a gift from her mother on her 21st birthday. At 23, she felt as if she had aged decades. The doorman examined her from head to toe when she identified herself. His look was a mixture of distrust and pity that Emma was already used to receiving. The private elevator was larger than her bathroom, with mirrors that infinitely reflected her nervousness. When the doors opened directly into the penthouse, Emma felt breathless. The apartment was immense, with floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a panoramic view of the city. A stern housekeeper led her through a hallway decorated with artwork to a living room that could easily accommodate her entire apartment. "Mr. Mitchell will see you in a moment," the housekeeper informed her dryly before leaving her alone. Emma tried to focus on her breathing, mentally repeating all her qualifications. She had worked as an aide in a daycare during her first year of college, gave private lessons on weekends, and above all, loved children. But her hands were sweating and her heart was beating erratically. That's when she heard a child's laugh coming from somewhere in the apartment, followed by hurried footsteps. A girl of approximately 6 years old ran through the living room, her brown hair flying like wings. She stopped abruptly upon seeing Emma, her large, curious eyes studying the visitor. "Hi," Emma smiled, feeling some of her tension dissipate. "I'm Emma." The girl tilted her head as if carefully evaluating the situation. "Are you the new nanny?" "I don't know yet. I came to talk to your father about it." "Lily?" The masculine and deep voice cut through the air like a razor. "What did I say about talking to strangers?" Emma stood up quickly, turning toward the voice. The man standing at the door of the room emanated a natural authority that made her stomach freeze. Tall, wearing an impeccable suit, he had the same eyes as his daughter. But where hers shone with childish curiosity, his were cold and distant. "Sorry, Daddy," Lily murmured, running to hide behind her father's legs. "Ms. Cooper?" he asked, though he clearly knew who she was. His voice showed no emotion. "Yes, sir," Emma replied, struggling to keep her voice firm. "Sit down," he ordered, indicating the sofa while taking a seat in a leather armchair. Lily remained by his side, now serious and restrained, as if she had put on a mask. "Lily, you can go play in your room now." The girl hesitated for a moment, casting a last curious look at Emma before quietly leaving the room. The contrast between the laughing child from moments before and the obedient figure who had just left was disturbing. "So, Ms. Cooper," Mr. Mitchell began, leafing through a folder that Emma recognized as her resume. "I see you dropped out of college in your 2nd year. Why?" The question, though expected, still hurt. "Family matters, sir. I needed to take responsibility for my younger sister." He murmured, without showing whether the answer satisfied him or not. "And why should I trust the care of my daughter to someone who didn't complete her education?" Emma felt the blood rise to her face. Because sometimes, sir, life teaches us more than any diploma could. I know what it's like to care for a child, protect her, ensure she has everything. She needs to grow up happy and safe, not just from education or professional experience, but because I live it every day. Mr. Mitchell studied her for a long moment, his face remaining impassive. My daughter doesn't need a friend, Ms. Cooper. She needs someone who ensures she follows her routine of studies and activities without causing problems, someone who understands their place in this house. The words hit her like a slap. Emma thought of Lily's laugh, the way her eyes shone when she saw her, and then the mask of seriousness she assumed in her father's presence. She thought of Amy, how her sister needed more than just routines and discipline. With all due respect, sir, she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Every child needs a friend, especially when they've lost their mother. The silence that followed was absolute. Mr. Mitchell stared at her with an intensity that made Emma question if she had just thrown away her only chance at getting the job. But she maintained his gaze, refusing to look away or apologize. "How do you know about my wife?" he finally asked, his voice dangerously low. "I researched you before the interview," Emma admitted. "I thought it was important to know the family I might be working with." He stood up abruptly, walking to the window. For several minutes he remained silent, observing the city below. Emma felt each second weigh like lead on her shoulders. "The salary is as advertised," he said finally, still with his back to her. "You start tomorrow. Ruth, the housekeeper, will show you your quarters and your duties. Don't disappoint me. Ms. Cooper." Emma stood up, her legs trembling. "I won't disappoint you, sir, neither you nor Lily." When he turned, his face was once again completely neutral. "We'll see." The first days in the mansion were a constant test of patience and endurance. Ruth, the housekeeper, made a point of reminding Emma of her place at every opportunity. Meals were served at specific times in the staff kitchen. The uniform, 3 identical sets of navy blue dresses, should always be impeccable. And above, all Mr. Mitchell should not be disturbed under any circumstance. Lily, on the other hand, seemed to flourish with Emma's presence. The girl followed her everywhere, asking thousands of questions about everything. Where did Emma live before? Why is the sky blue? How do birds know where to fly? Her curiosity was insatiable, her eyes shining with each new discovery. But just hearing her father's footsteps in the hallway was enough for Lily to transform. Her small body would tense, her voice would lower to a whisper, and that mask of seriousness would return to her face. It was as if she were 2 different children, one lively and curious, the other contained and silent. One night after putting Lily to bed, Emma found her crying softly, hugging a photo. In the image, a young and beautiful woman smiled, holding a baby Lily in her arms. Mr. Mitchell was beside them, and Emma barely recognized him. His face was illuminated by a smile she had never seen. "I miss her," Lily whispered when Emma sat on the edge of her bed. "Sometimes I try to remember what her voice was like, but I can't anymore." Emma's heart ached. She sat beside the girl, letting her nestle in her arms. "Do you want to tell me about her?" Lily sniffled, still holding the photo. "Daddy doesn't. Like when I talk about her, he gets sad." "And you? How do you feel when you talk about her?" The girl thought for a moment. "Less alone." Emma swallowed the knot that formed in her throat. "Then let's talk about her. Tell me everything you remember." For almost an hour, Lily talked about her mother, how she sang while making pancakes. On Sunday mornings, how she had a garden full of roses that she cared for personally, how her perfume smelled like flowers after the rain. "She called me Little Star," Lily said, her eyes starting to grow heavy with sleep. "Because she said I lit up her days." Emma was so absorbed in Lily's stories that she didn't notice the presence at the door. When she finally noticed Mr. Mitchell standing there, her blood froze. How long had he been listening? "Ms. Cooper," his voice was controlled, but Emma could feel the tension emanating from him. "In my office, now." Lily immediately shrank back, her eyes wide with fear. Emma squeezed her hand gently before standing. "It's all right, Little Star, sleep well." The walk to the office seemed to last an eternity. Mr. Mitchell didn't say a word, but his rigid posture made his contained fury clear. When they finally arrived, he closed the door with more force than necessary. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "Helping your daughter cope with grief," Emma responded, surprising herself with her calmness. "Don't you dare," he took a step toward her, "presume to know what's best for my daughter. You don't have that right." "With all due respect, sir," Emma held her ground, "your daughter is suffering. She needs to talk about her mother. She needs to process this loss." "And what do you know about loss?" He practically spat the words. "More than you imagine," she replied, feeling tears burn her eyes. "I lost my parents 2 years ago. I know exactly what it's like to have memories slipping through your fingers because no one wants to talk about who's gone. I know what it's like to feel that you're betraying the person who left by daring to be happy sometimes." Mr. Mitchell stepped back as if he'd been slapped. For a moment, his mask of coldness faltered, and Emma saw raw pain in his eyes. "You don't understand," he said, his voice hoarse. "I promised her that I would protect Lily, that I would keep her safe. And you're failing miserably." At that, Emma said, knowing she was risking her job but unable to contain herself. "You're so busy protecting Lily from pain that you're preventing her from healing. She doesn't need to be protected from memories of her mother. She needs to be allowed to love her, even if she's no longer here." The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Mitchell stared at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled again. "You are dismissed for today, Ms. Cooper, and don't make me regret not firing you right now." Emma left the office with trembling legs. As she passed Lily's room, she heard the soft breathing of the girl sleeping. She continued to her own room, a simple but comfortable space at the end of the staff corridor. Lying in her bed, she finally let the tears fall. She thought of Amy alone in the apartment. She thought of her parents, of all the times she wished she could talk about them freely, and she thought of Lily, carrying a weight too big for her small shoulders. That night, Emma made a silent promise. No matter what happened, she wouldn't let Lily face that pain alone, even if it meant facing Mr. Mitchell's wrath every day. What she didn't know was that at that same moment in his office, Mr. Mitchell was holding the same photo. The weeks turned into months, and gradually a new routine was established in the Mitchell mansion. Emma learned to navigate the minefield that was the Mitchell home, always attentive to Ruth's moods and the boss's strict rules. But it was the changes in Lily that drew the most attention. The girl began to smile more, even in her father's presence. Her grades at school, which were already good, improved even more. And most importantly, that division between two personalities slowly began to dissolve. Emma observed, with a mixture of pride and apprehension, how Lily gradually found her own voice. On a particularly hot afternoon, while helping Lily with homework on the porch, Emma noticed Mr. Mitchell watching them from the door. He did this frequently now, appeared silently, stayed for a few minutes and left without saying a word. It was as if he were studying them, trying to understand something that eluded him. "Emma," Lily called, pulling her back to the present. "Can I show you something? It's a secret." Emma quickly looked to where Mr. Mitchell had been, but he had already disappeared. "Of course, little star. What is it?" Lily took her backpack and pulled out a folded paper. When she opened it, Emma felt her heart tighten. It was a drawing made with crayons, 3 figures holding hands under a bright blue sky. One was clearly Lily, another Mr. Mitchell, and the third— "It's you," Lily explained, her face radiant with pride. "It's the 3 of us. It's for family." Day at school. Emma felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Lily, sweetheart, I can't." "Why not?" the girl asked, her voice small. "You take care of me like Mummy did. You make me laugh, help me with homework, tell me stories." "Lily," Emma tried, her throat tight, "I'm your nanny. I can't replace your mother." "I know you're not my mother," Lily replied, tears starting to form in her eyes. "But you're family, too." "Please, Emma. All the other students will bring their families." Before Emma could respond, a voice cut through the air like ice. What's going on here? Mr. Mitchell was back, his eyes fixed on the drawing in Lily's hands. The girl quickly tried to hide it, but it was too late. Her father crossed the porch in 3 long strides and snatched the paper from her hands. Emma saw the exact moment when he understood what he was seeing. His face paled, then turned red with fury. "Lily, go to your room, now." "But Daddy, now!" Lily ran inside, sobbing. Emma made a move to follow her, but Mr. Mitchell's voice stopped her. "You stay." Emma had never seen him so furious. He held the drawing with such force that the paper was crumpled in his hands. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, his whole voice trembling with anger. "First the stories about Hannah, now this. Are you trying to take her place?" "No," Emma protested, feeling tears in her own eyes. "That was never the intention. Lily is a child," he exploded. "An impressionable child who is confusing things because you've crossed all boundaries. I hired you to be a nanny, not to play happy family." "And you were hired to be a father," Emma retorted, her own anger finally spilling over. "But you're failing at that too. Your daughter is begging for connection, for love, for a real family, and all you offer are rules and silence." Mr. Mitchell took a step toward her, his face contorted with fury. For a moment, Emma thought he might yell again. But when he spoke, his voice was low and cutting. "You're fired." Emma felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "Please, don't do this. Lily needs structure and discipline, not an employee who doesn't know her place. Pack your things. I want you out of this house in an hour." "At least let me say goodbye to her," Emma begged, tears now flowing freely down her face. "No," he replied coldly. "You've caused enough damage." Emma stumbled to her room, her world spinning. How had she let things get to this point? How would she explain to Amy that she had lost another job? And Lily? Her heart broke thinking about the girl. With trembling hands, she began to pack her few clothes in the same suitcase she had arrived with. In the hallway, she could hear the muffled sobs coming from Lily's room. It was then that desperate knocking sounded at her door. When she opened it, Lily threw herself into her arms, crying uncontrollably. "Don't go," she sobbed, clinging to Emma as if her life depended on it. "Please, don't leave me alone again." Emma hugged her tightly, her own body shaking with suppressed sobs. "I'm sorry, little star, I'm so sorry. Lily!" Mr. Mitchell was standing in the hallway, his face a mask of fury. Beside him, Ruth looked horrified at the scene. "Take her away," he ordered the housekeeper. Ruth tried to take Lily, but the girl clung even more to Emma. "No, I don't want her to go. Please, Daddy." "Enough," he thundered. "Ruth, take my daughter to her room right now. And you," he pointed at Emma, "have 10 minutes to leave my house before I call security." Ruth finally managed to tear Lily from Emma's arms. The girl struggled and screamed as she was dragged down the hallway. Emma finished packing her things in a blur of tears. When she left the room, she could still hear Lily's screams echoing through the house. Mr. Mitchell was no longer there. He had locked himself in his office. At the exit, Ruth was waiting with an envelope. "Your final payment," she said dryly. "And some advice. Forget this house and this family. It will be better for everyone." Emma took the envelope without saying a word. As she passed through the gates of the mansion for the last time, she felt as if she was leaving much more than just a job behind. She was leaving her heart as well. The small apartment seemed even smaller after months in the mansion. Amy found Emma sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by newspapers with job advertisements circled in red. Her older sister had barely touched her food since returning 3 days ago. "There's a new computer course at school," Amy commented, sitting beside her sister. "The principal said I can take it for free, since my grades are good." Emma tried to smile, but the gesture didn't reach her eyes. "That's great, Amy. It'll be good for your resume." Amy took her sister's hand. "You can't continue like this. I've already lost our parents. I don't want to lose you too." The words hit Emma like a slap. She looked at her sister, no longer the little girl she needed to protect, but a strong and determined young woman. When had this happened? "I'm sorry," Emma whispered, pulling Amy into a hug. It's just that It hurts so much." "I know," Amy responded softly. "You got attached to them, didn't you? To Lily and to her father too." Emma pulled away abruptly. "Don't be ridiculous. Mr. Mitchell was just my employer." "Then why do you say his name in your sleep?" Before Emma could respond, loud knocks sounded at the door. The sisters looked at each other, confused. They weren't expecting visitors, especially at that hour of the night. When Emma opened the door, her heart stopped. Ruth was standing in the hallway, looking extremely uncomfortable. "May I come in?" the housekeeper asked, nervously looking over her shoulder, as if afraid of being seen. Emma hesitated, but stepped aside. Ruth quickly entered, her eyes scanning the small apartment with an unreadable expression. "Lily won't eat, won't sleep, won't talk to anyone," Ruth said without preamble. "Mr. Mitchell is losing control of the situation." Emma felt her heart tighten. "Why are you telling me this?" Ruth sighed heavily, suddenly looking very tired. "Because I've worked in that house for 20 years. I saw Lily born, I saw Mrs. Hannah die, and never have I seen that family so alive as in the months you were there." "I can't do anything," Emma replied, her voice trembling. "I was fired, remember?" "I didn't come to ask you to return," Ruth said, taking an envelope from her bag. "I came to deliver this. Lily has been writing a letter to you every day since you left. Mr. Mitchell doesn't know I've kept them." Emma took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were several folded papers, covered with Lily's irregular handwriting. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked, tears blurring her vision. "Because I promised Mrs. Hannah that I would take care of her family," Ruth answered simply. "And for the first time in 4 years, I feel that I'm failing in that promise." After Ruth left, Emma spent hours reading Lily's letters. The girl wrote about her day, about how she missed the bedtime stories, about how her father was more distant than ever. The last letter broke her heart. "Dear Emma, today I was looking at our photo from the picnic day. Daddy doesn't know I kept a copy. In that photo he was really smiling, just like in the old photos with Mommy. Why are adults so afraid of being happy? Your little star." Emma didn't sleep that night. She stood by the window watching the trains pass, carrying their loads to unknown destinations. How had her life become so complicated? A few months ago, she was just looking for a job to pay the bills. Now her heart was divided into so many pieces that she barely knew how to put them back together. The next morning, the phone rang. It was from the school where she had interviewed weeks ago. They were offering a position as an assistant teacher. The salary was less than at the mansion, but it was a chance to return to the field she loved. While preparing for the new interview, Emma found something at the bottom of her drawer, the mansion's ID badge, with her photo smiling timidly at the camera. On the back, written in childish handwriting, was a message that Lily had left on her last day. "To the best nanny and friend in the world." It was then that the doorbell rang again. When Emma opened the door, her blood froze. It wasn't Ruth this time. It was Mr. Mitchell's mother. Victoria Mitchell was exactly as Emma had imagined. Tall, elegant, with perfectly arranged grey hair and discreet but visibly expensive jewelry. Her cold eyes analyzed the apartment, and Emma with equal disdain. "May I come in?" she asked, though she was already crossing the threshold. "I won't. Take long. People like me don't usually frequent places like this." Emma felt her face burn but maintained her composure. Amy, who was leaving for school, paused at the kitchen door, hesitant. "Go to school," Emma said softly to her sister. "Don't be late." Amy cast one last concerned look before leaving. Victoria waited until she heard the door close to speak. "How much?" Emma blinked, confused. "Excuse me? How much do you want to disappear completely from my son and granddaughter's life?" Victoria opened her designer purse, taking out a checkbook. "There must be a price that will make you understand your place." Emma's initial humiliation transformed into fury. "Are you offering me money?" "I'm offering a civilized solution," Victoria replied, her voice icy. "You're not the first employee to try to take advantage of a vulnerable situation, dear. My son has been emotionally unstable since Hannah's death. and Lily is just an impressionable child. Don't talk about her as if you know her, Emma retorted, trembling with anger. You don't even know that Lily cries every night? That she keeps her mother's photo under her pillow? That she drew you as part of the family? Victoria interrupted with a cruel smile. Yes, my son told me everything. Your little manipulation almost worked, I must admit, but now it's over. She tore off a check and started writing. This amount should be enough to pay for your unfinished college education. Maybe even buy a better apartment for you and your sister. All you need to do is sign a non-contact agreement and never contact my family again. Emma looked at the check that Victoria extended. The amount was more money than she had ever seen in her life. She could give Amy a better life, achieve her own dreams. With a quick movement, Emma took the check and tore it into pieces. Get out of my house, she said, her voice trembling. Now. Victoria didn't seem surprised. In fact, a sinister smile formed on her lips. You really thought you had a choice? She asked softly. That you could simply enter my family's life and not suffer the consequences? These are just empty threats, Emma replied, though a shiver ran down her spine. Are they? Victoria took an envelope from her purse. Do you know what's in here? Your sister's scholarship. It's impressive how an anonymous complaint about falsified documents can cause so much damage. Emma's blood froze. You wouldn't do that. I already have, Victoria smiled. The cancellation notice arrives tomorrow. But that's just the beginning. Have you thought about how difficult it will be to get another job when all your previous references give problematic information about your character? Emma staggered, leaning against the wall. Why? Why do all this? Because people like you need to learn their place, Victoria replied coldly. My son is destined to marry someone of our class. The merger contract with the Addams family depends on it. I won't let a nanny ruin years of planning. She walked to the door, stopping only for a final blow. Oh, and that assistant teacher job. Don't bother going to the interview. The position has already been filled. After Victoria left, Emma slid to the floor, her entire body trembling. How had she been so naive? Did she really think she could be part of that world? The phone rang, making her jump. It was from Amy's school. Her sister had fainted during physical education class. The doctor diagnosed severe anemia. She needed treatment, tests, expensive medications. Emma looked at the torn pieces of the check on the floor. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder if she should have accepted it. The price of her dignity seemed small compared to Amy's health. That night, alone in her room, Emma cried until she had no more tears. On the wall, the calendar, marked exactly 2 months since her dismissal from the mansion. On her desk, Lily's letters seemed to weigh a ton. Her cell phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. When she opened it, her heart stopped. Wi-Fi password, little star 123, Lily is not well, come now, Ruth. Emma looked out the window, at the rain that was starting to fall. She grabbed her purse and keys, knowing she was about to do something crazy. What she didn't know was that Victoria Mitchell was also receiving a message at that moment, and unlike Emma, she smiled reading its content. She took the bait. Start phase 2 of the plan. The rain was falling mercilessly when Emma arrived at the back of the mansion. She knew that entrance well. It was where the staff entered and exited. Her heart was beating so hard it seemed about to explode. Ruth was waiting at the kitchen door, her face a mask of concern. Lily has had a high fever for 3 days, the housekeeper whispered, pulling Emma inside. She won't eat, won't take her medicine. She only calls for you. And Mr. Mitchell, Emma asked, wringing her soaked coat. Locked in his office, as always. Barely looks at the girl. Emma felt a wave of anger. How could he be so blind, so cold to his own daughter? The path to Lily's room seemed different in the dark. The shadows danced on the walls, transforming the familiar corridors into a frightening labyrinth. When they finally reached the door to her room, Emma hesitated. Go, Ruth gently pushed her. She needs you. Emma opened the door slowly. The room was in semi-darkness, illuminated only by the star lamp that she herself had given as a gift to Lily. In the bed, the girl tossed and turned restlessly, mumbling disconnected words. "Little star," Emma called softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily's eyes opened slowly. For a moment she seemed confused, as if she didn't believe what she was seeing. "Emma?" Her voice was hoarse. "You came back." "I'm here." Emma took her hand, startled by the heat of the fever. "I came to see you." Lily tried to sit up, but she was too weak. "You won't leave again, will you?" Emma's heart broke. "Not now, little star. Let's take care of that fever first, okay?" For almost an hour, Emma used all the tricks she knew to make Lily take her medicine and eat a little soup. She sang her favorite songs, told silly stories, pretended the medicines were magic potions. Gradually, the fever began to subside. Lily, calmer now, fought against sleep. "Tell me a story," she asked, her voice already slurred. "The one about the princess who saved the dragon." Emma smiled, adjusting the covers. "Once upon a time, there was a princess different from all others." It was in the middle of the story that the door opened violently. Mr. Mitchell was standing there, his face a mask of fury that Emma had never seen before. "How dare you?" he growled, advancing into the room. "How dare you invade my house in the middle of the night?" "Daddy, no." Lily tried to get up, but she was too weak. "Mr. Mitchell, please." Emma stood up, placing herself between him and the bed. "Lily is sick. She needed—" "Out!" he shouted, grabbing her arm forcefully. "Guards, we have an intruder." "No," Lily was crying now. "Please, Daddy, let her stay." But Mr. Mitchell was already dragging Emma out of the room. In the hallway, 2 security guards appeared running. "Take her away," he ordered, "and call the police." "The police?" Emma felt her blood freeze. "Please don't do this. I just wanted to help." "Help?" he laughed humorlessly. "First you try to manipulate my daughter, then you break into my house in the middle of the night. You're obsessed. You're a danger." "That's not true." Emma struggled against the guards. "Ruth called me. She said Lily needed me." Mr. Mitchell frowned, turning to Ruth, who was watching everything from the end of the hallway. "Is this true?" Ruth stepped forward, her face completely neutral. "Of course not, sir. I would never do such a thing." Emma felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "What? But you sent a message. The Wi-Fi password." "The young lady is clearly disturbed," Ruth said coldly. "I suggest calling an ambulance as well." Emma looked around, desperate. Had everyone gone crazy? What was happening? It was then that she saw at the top of the stairs, Victoria Mitchell was watching the scene with a satisfied smile on her lips. And Emma finally understood. She had fallen into a trap. "Please," she begged Mr. Mitchell, tears streaming down her face. "Let me explain." But he had already turned, going back to Lily's room. The girl's screams echoed through the house. "Emma! Emma!" The guards dragged her to the exit. The rain was still falling, mixing with her tears. Before they threw her onto the sidewalk, Emma had one last glimpse of the mansion. In the window of Lily's room, a small hand pressed against the glass. Emma stumbled down the street, soaked and trembling. There were no buses at that hour, and her cell phone had fallen during the confusion. When she finally arrived home, Amy was waiting up, sick with worry. "What happened?" her sister asked, helping her remove her wet clothes. Emma opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Instead, she fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. How to explain that she had lost not only her job and her reputation, but also the chance to help a child she loved as if she were her own? How to say that she had been used in a cruel game that she didn't even fully understand? The next morning, the headline in the local newspaper said it all. "Obsessive nanny breaks into Upper East Side mansion. Mitchell family intends to press charges." The days that followed were a nightmare in slow motion. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists wanting a statement, curious neighbors, unknown numbers with veiled threats. Emma barely left her room, consumed by a toxic mixture of shame and despair. Amy tried to keep things functioning. She prepared food that Emma barely touched, collected the mail, filtered the calls, but even she was beginning to show signs of exhaustion. "We need help," Amy said one morning, sitting on the edge of her sister's bed. "You can't continue like this. Emma just turned to the wall, pulling the blanket over her head. How could she ask for help when her life was crumbling on all sides? Amy's school had indeed cancelled her scholarship, bills were piling up, and now, with her reputation destroyed, what job could she get? That's when the doorbell rang. Amy went to answer and returned with a brown envelope in her hands. "It's from Mitchell & Associates Law Office," she said, her voice trembling. Emma sat up in bed, her heart racing. Inside the envelope was an official document, a preliminary restraining order, prohibiting her from approaching the mansion or any member of the Mitchell family. But there was something else, a handwritten note on letterhead paper. "There's still time to accept my offer. Next time it won't just be a restraining order. Think of your sister. VM." Emma crumpled the note forcefully, tears of anger streaming down her face. Did that woman have no limits? "Em," Amy called softly, sitting beside her. "There's one more thing." She held out a crumpled paper that Emma immediately recognized. It was one of Lily's drawings, folded several times. "How?" "Ruth brought it yesterday when you were sleeping," Amy explained. "Said Lily hid it in her clothes." Emma carefully unfolded the paper. It was a new drawing. In it, a small girl was crying while a tall figure with dark hair walked away. At the top of the page, written in childish handwriting, "Why do adults always leave?" Something inside Emma broke. It was as if all the emotions she had repressed over the past weeks finally overflowed. "I can't anymore," she sobbed, hugging Amy. "I can't stand seeing everyone I love suffering because of me." Amy hugged her tightly. "Then fight. Not for the mansion, not for the job, not even for yourself. Fight for Lily." Emma pulled away, wiping her tears. "How? Victoria Mitchell has all the power, all the money, but she doesn't have the truth," a voice said from the door. The sisters turned, surprised. Ruth was standing there holding a thick folder. "How did you get in?" Emma asked, confused. "Your sister gave me a copy of the key," Ruth answered, entering the room. "After I delivered the drawing yesterday." She placed the folder on the bed. "Do you know why I've worked for the Mitchells for so long? Because Hannah asked." Me too, she knew. Knew that one day the family would need someone who reminded everyone what really matters. "Why did you betray me that night then?" Emma asked, the hurt evident in her voice. "Because I needed Victoria to believe I was on her side," Ruth responded simply. "So I could gather this." She opened the folder, revealing dozens of documents, photos, and papers. "Victoria Mitchell isn't the saint she pretends to be," Ruth continued. "For years she's manipulated her son's life, destroyed relationships, sabotaged careers, all in the name of what she calls preserving the family legacy." Emma picked up some photos. They showed Victoria in secret meetings, exchanging envelopes, whispering with dubious-looking people. "And there's more." Ruth took a flash drive from her pocket. "Recordings, conversations, including about how she planned that night at the mansion, how she forced me to participate by threatening to reveal secrets about my family." "Why are you showing me this now?" Emma asked. "Because Lily hasn't eaten in a week," Ruth answered, her voice breaking. "Because Mr. Mitchell is drinking more and more. Because that house is dying, and you're the only one who can save it." Emma looked at the documents spread across her bed, evidence enough to destroy Victoria Mitchell. But at what cost? "If I use this," she said slowly, "I'll hurt Mr. Mitchell too. He'll discover that his own mother—" "Sometimes we need to break something to be able to fix it," Ruth interrupted. "The question is, are you willing to take the risk?" Emma picked up Lily's drawing, running her fingers over the sad lines. She thought of the girl alone in that cold mansion, waiting for someone else she loved to simply disappear. "What do I need to do?" she finally asked. Ruth smiled, the first genuine smile Emma had ever seen on her face. "First thing, we need to talk to Hannah." Emma frowned. "Hannah is dead." "Yes," Ruth answered, taking a final envelope from the folder. "But she left a letter that Victoria never let her son read." The envelope was yellowed with time, sealed with red wax. The name James, Mr. Mitchell's first name, was written in the delicate handwriting that Emma recognized from old photos in the mansion. Hannah wrote this a week before the accident, Ruth explained, her voice low as if telling a sacred secret. She asked me to deliver it if anything happened to her, but Victoria found it first, threatened to fire me if I told anyone. Emma opened the envelope carefully, as if handling a precious relic. Inside were several pages covered with the same elegant handwriting. My love, if you're reading this, it means what I feared most has happened. It means I'm no longer there to tell you in person all the things I need you to know. First, and most importantly, nothing that happened was your fault. I know you'll blame yourself. You'll go over every decision, every moment. But please understand, I chose to make that trip. I chose to drive that night even with the storm. Those were my choices, not yours. Second, Lily, our little star. You promised you would protect her, and I know you're doing that in the only way you know how. But James, protection without love is just a pretty prison. Our daughter doesn't need walls. She needs hugs. She doesn't need silence. She needs stories about her mother, even if it hurts to tell them. And finally, your mother. Victoria never accepted our marriage, you know that. But what you don't know is that she tried to buy me off to leave when she found out I was pregnant. Offered money, threatened to destroy my reputation, exactly as she did with all the other people who threatened her plans for you. I'm not telling you this to cause more pain, my love. I'm telling you because I know that, without me, she will. Try to control your life again. She'll use guilt, fear, and pain to manipulate you and Lily. Don't let her. You are stronger than you think, James. You always have been. Strong enough to love me even when everyone said I wasn't suitable. Strong enough to be a father even having grown up without knowing what true paternal love is. So I beg you, don't let grief transform you into a prison. Don't let Lily grow up thinking that love is something that needs to be earned, controlled, measured. Don't let your mother turn our story into another one of her business deals. And when, not if, but when, you find someone who makes your heart beat faster again, don't be afraid. Love isn't something that ends when we share it. On the contrary, it multiplies. I've loved you from the first moment when you spilled coffee on me in that cafe. I love you now, writing this letter that I hope you'll never need to read. And I will always love you even if I'm no longer here to say it. Be happy, my love. Allow yourself to live again. With all my heart, Hannah. Emma finished reading with tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Amy was also crying. Even Ruth seemed emotional. She knew, Emma whispered. She knew everything Victoria was capable of. And now you know too, Ruth replied. The question is, what will you do with this information? Emma carefully folded the letter, putting it back in the envelope. I can't just deliver this to Mr. Mitchell, she said. Victoria would never allow me to get close. No, Ruth agreed, but there's someone who can. Who? The fiancé. Emma felt her stomach sink. What fiancé? The Adams daughter, Ruth explained. The engagement will be announced this weekend at the company gala ball. Victoria finally got what she wanted, the merger of the families through an arranged marriage. Emma felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Mr. Mitchell was getting married to someone he didn't even know. Emma, Amy called, softly. Are you okay? I am, she responded automatically, though her heart was being crushed. This doesn't change anything. I need to help Lily, that's all that matters. But Ruth was looking at her with a strange expression, as if she knew exactly what Emma was feeling. The ball is in 3 days, the housekeeper said. All the important staff will be there, including me. I can get an extra invitation. And how exactly is Emma going to get in? Amy asked. Victoria will recognize her immediately. Ruth smiled mysteriously. Not if she's unrecognizable. She took another paper from the folder, a golden invitation to the gala ball. The theme is masks, Ruth explained. Everyone will be wearing one. It's our only chance. Emma took the invitation, feeling its weight in her hands. It was madness. Of course, if she were caught, the consequences would be disastrous. But then she thought of Lily, alone and sad in that mansion. She thought of Mr. Mitchell, about to marry someone he didn't love just to satisfy his mother's plans. She thought of Hannah writing that letter full of love and hope. "Okay," she finally said. "Let's do this." What Emma didn't know was that, at that exact moment, in the Mitchell mansion, Lily was doing something that would change everything. She was writing her own letter, a letter addressed to her father's fiancée. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered like a golden dream. Hundreds of people circulated wearing elaborate masks, their expensive dresses and suits reflecting the lights of the immense crystal chandeliers. Emma barely recognized herself in the bathroom mirror. Amy and Ruth had done an incredible job. Her normally brown hair was blonde, pulled back in an elegant bun. The midnight blue dress, borrowed from a friend of Ruth's, hugged her body as if it had been made for her. And the mask, a delicate piece covered with small silver stars, perfectly concealed the upper part of her face. "Remember," Ruth's voice sounded through the small earpiece hidden in her hair, "Beatrice Adams is wearing a red dress and a butterfly mask. Victoria keeps her close at all times, so be careful." Emma took a deep breath, adjusting the small purse where she kept Hannah's letter. The last 72 hours had been a rush of preparations, rehearsals and carefully elaborated plans. Now there was no turning back. Leaving the bathroom, she immediately spotted Victoria Mitchell in the center of the ballroom. The matriarch was stunning in a black dress, her golden mask shining like a crown. Beside her, a young woman in a red dress smiled politely at the guests. So this was Beatrice Adams. Emma studied the future bride. She seemed uncomfortable, as if the butterfly mask was suffocating her. Her hands wouldn't stay still, constantly, adjusting either the dress or the mask. "Mr. Mitchell just arrived," Ruth informed through the earpiece, "with Lily." Emma's heart skipped a beat when she saw them. Mr. Mitchell was elegant as always in his tuxedo, but there was something different about him, a tension in the shoulders, a rigidity in the jaw. His simple black mask covered only his eyes, leaving his closed expression visible. But it was Lily who brought tears to Emma's eyes. The girl was beautiful in her light pink dress, but her fairy mask couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. She held her father's hand as if it were an anchor, clearly intimidated by the crowd. "Now," Ruth instructed, "Victoria is distracted with the Adams family. This is your chance." Emma began to circle the ballroom, discreetly approaching Beatrice. The future bride had moved a bit away from the group, stopping near one of the enormous windows. "Excuse me," Emma said softly. "Miss Adams?" Beatrice turned, surprised. "Yes. Could we talk? In private?" The young woman hesitated, looking nervously to where Victoria was talking. "It's about Lily," Emma added, "and about the man you're going to marry." Something changed in Beatrice's look. She nodded slightly and followed Emma to a side balcony, away from curious eyes. "Who are you?" Beatrice asked as soon as they were alone. Emma took an envelope from her purse. "Someone who cares about that family. Please read this, it's important." Beatrice took the envelope with trembling hands. As she read, her expression changed. Surprise, shock, sadness. Is this true?" she asked when she finished. Her voice choked. "Every word," Emma confirmed, "but there's more. Victoria isn't just doing this to her son. She is doing it to me too," Beatrice completed bitterly. "You think I don't know? That I haven't noticed how she manipulated my father, how she used our company's debts to force this marriage?" Emma blinked, surprised. "You knew?" "Of course I knew. But what choice did I have?" Beatrice laughed humorlessly. "It's the same with James, isn't it? Neither of us has a choice, not with Victoria Mitchell pulling the strings." "There's always a choice," Emma said softly. Hannah knew that. That's why she left this letter. Beatrice studied her for a moment. "You're her, aren't you? The nanny Victoria destroyed?" Emma felt her heart race. "How?" "Lily told me." Beatrice smiled sadly. "She wrote me a letter too. It arrived yesterday, hidden in a flower arrangement. Want to see?" She took a folded paper from the neckline of her dress. Emma immediately recognized Lily's handwriting. "Dear Aunt Beatrice, you don't know me yet, but soon you'll be my stepmother. I wanted to tell you something important. My daddy doesn't smile anymore. He used to smile, you know, when Emma was here. Emma was my nanny, but she was more than that. She made us happy." Grandma Victoria says you're going to be my new mother. But I don't want a new mother. I already have one in heaven. What I want is my family back. I want my daddy smiling again. Please don't marry him just because Grandma wants. He deserves to be happy. I do too. With love, Lily. Emma finished reading, with tears streaming under her mask. She's special, isn't she? Beatrice commented. So small but so wise. More than we imagine, Emma agreed, wiping away the tears. Emma, Ruth's urgent voice sounded through the earpiece. Victoria is looking for Beatrice. You need to get out of there now. But it was too late. A cutting voice froze Emma's blood. Well, what an interesting meeting. Victoria Mitchell was standing at the entrance to the balcony, her golden mask shining threateningly. And beside her, eyes wide with shock behind the black mask, was Mr. Mitchell. Time seemed to freeze on the balcony. Emma felt her heart beating. So hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Hannah's letter weighed in her hand like lead. I should have known, Victoria said, her voice distilling venom. I should have known you wouldn't accept defeat easily. Guards. No, Beatrice positioned herself in front of Emma. Mrs. Mitchell, please, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Victoria cut in. This intruder will be removed and properly prosecuted. Mother, Mr. Mitchell finally spoke, his voice strangely calm. Why did Hannah write that letter? Victoria froze. What letter? The one Miss Cooper is holding, he replied, taking a step forward. The one with my wife's handwriting. James, don't be ridiculous. She obviously forged. How could she forge something that was kept in your safe? Ruth appeared behind them carrying a folder. Something you made me hide 4 years ago? Victoria turned abruptly. You traitor, after everything I did for you. You didn't do anything for anyone. Ruth interrupted. You only destroyed lives, and I have proof. She opened the folder, revealing photos and documents. Every person who tried to get close to your son, every relationship you destroyed, every life you ruined. Mr. Mitchell picked up some photos, his eyes widening as he recognized faces, dates, situations. Amanda, he murmured. Caroline, all of them. All of them were unsuitable, Victoria said coldly. None of them was worthy of the Mitchell name. Like Hannah? He asked, his voice trembling. Is that why you tried to buy her off too? She told you. Victoria lost her composure for the first time. No, he answered, taking the letter from Emma's hands. She's telling me now. The silence that followed was deafening as he read. Emma could see every emotion passing over his face. Shock, pain, anger, understanding. Why? He finally asked, looking at his mother. Why do all this? To protect you, Victoria exploded. You think I built this empire to watch you throw it away because of feelings? Love is weak, James. Power is eternal. Power? A small, clear voice cut through the air. Is it more important than happiness? Everyone turned. Lily was standing there, her fairy mask in her hand, tears streaming down her face. Is that why you don't let Daddy smile, Grandma, because of power? Victoria recoiled as if she'd been slapped. Lily, darling, it's not like that. Yes, it is, the girl shouted, surprising everyone. You made Emma go away. Made Daddy sad, want him to marry Aunt Bea even though she doesn't want to. You only break things. Lily. Mr. Mitchell took a step toward his daughter, but she ran, straight into Emma's arms. The hug was instantaneous, natural, as if the last months hadn't existed. Emma held her tight, feeling the girl's tears soaking her dress. Don't go away again, Lily sobbed. Please. Never again, little star, Emma promised, her own voice choked. Never again. James, Victoria tried one last time, think about what you're doing. The merger with the Adams is already cancelled, Beatrice interrupted, removing her engagement ring. As are my family's debts. Apparently, your lawyer was very interested in the evidence of manipulation and blackmail that Ruth gathered. Victoria staggered, leaning on the balcony railing. Her empire of manipulations was crumbling before her eyes. Mother, Mr. Mitchell said, his voice carrying an old sadness. You need to go. What? Now. And don't come back. Not until you learn that love is not a weakness. That family is not a business. Victoria straightened her posture, her golden mask shining one last time. You'll regret this, she said coldly. All of you. And with that, she left the balcony, her back straight and proud as always. But everyone knew her power was over. The silence that followed was broken by Lily. Daddy, are you still mad at Emma? Mr. Mitchell looked at Emma, still embracing his daughter. For the first time in months, he really looked beyond the anger, beyond his mother's manipulations, beyond his own fears. No, little star, he answered softly. I'm not angry. In fact, he took a step toward them, removing his mask. I think I need to apologize. The ballroom had gradually emptied, guests leaving with whispers and speculation about the sudden cancellation of the engagement. Only a small group remained in a secluded corner. Emma still in her blue dress, Mr. Mitchell without his mask, Lily asleep in Ruth's lap, and Beatrice, who seemed lighter after returning the engagement ring. I need to go, Beatrice said softly, standing up. My father must be worried about all this confusion. Will you be all right? Emma asked, genuinely concerned. Beatrice smiled, a true smile different from the polite smiles she displayed earlier. I will. For the first time in a long time, I'll truly be fine. She turned to Mr. Mitchell. James, I hope you find the happiness you deserve, that all of you find it. After she left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Ruth gently adjusted Lily in her arms. I'll take the little one home, she said. I think you two need to talk. Mr. Mitchell nodded, watching as the housekeeper carried his sleeping daughter away. When they were alone, Emma felt the full weight of the past months fall on her shoulders. Why didn't you tell me, he finally asked, about my mother, about the threats? Would you have believed me? Emma returned softly. He ran his hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. No, probably not. I wasn't seeing much of anything back then. You were protecting your heart, she said. Hannah, after everything? No, he interrupted her. I was hiding from the pain, from life, from any possibility of feeling anything again. He laughed humorlessly. It's ironic, isn't it? All this time thinking I was protecting Lily, when in reality I was just teaching her to have the same fear I did. Emma took a step toward him, hesitant. It's still not too late. For either of you. He looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. Why did you come back? He asked. After everything that happened, the accusations, the humiliation, why risk everything again? Emma felt tears forming in her eyes, because some people are worth any risk. Lily? Not just her. Mr. Mitchell caught his breath, taking a step toward her. Emma, James, a voice cut through the moment. It was Ruth returning hurriedly. It's Lily, she has a high fever again. Panic took over his face. Where is she? In the car. She's delirious, calling for Emma. Without thinking twice, Emma ran to the parking lot, James right behind her. In the back seat of the car, Lily was shivering, her little face red with fever. Emma, she called weakly, when she felt the familiar touch on her forehead. I'm here. A little star, Emma responded, getting into the car and pulling the girl onto her lap. I'm right here. You won't leave? No, James answered before Emma could, sitting beside them. She's not going anywhere. Never again. The look they exchanged over Lily's head said everything words couldn't express at that moment. Home? Ruth asked from the front seat. James took Emma's hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. Home, he confirmed. During the ride, while Lily slept more peacefully in her lap and James's hand held hers, Emma thought about how life could change in an instant, how doors that seemed forever closed could open again. The car stopped in front of the mansion, but something was different. The garden lights were on, illuminating the rose bushes that Hannah had loved so much. It was as if the house were waking from a long sleep. "Are you sure?" Emma asked softly as they climbed the stairs, Lily still asleep in her father's arms. James stopped, turning to her. In the entryway where once he had expelled her with such anger, now he looked at her with something very different in his eyes. "I've never been more certain in my life," he answered, "but you need to be sure too. We're not an easy family." Emma smiled, gently touching Lily's face. "The best families never are." It was then that Lily opened her eyes, looking between the two with a sleepy smile. "Finally," she murmured, "you took so long." And there, in the illuminated hallway of the mansion that once seemed so cold, three people laughed together for the first time. It was a new sound, a sound of healing, a sound of beginning again, the sound of a family finding its way back home. 6 months later, the garden of the Mitchell mansion was unrecognizable. Hannah's rose bushes, previously just surviving, now flourished in an explosion of colors. Among them, a girl of almost 7 ran, chasing butterflies and laughing. Emma watched from the porch, a cup of coffee in her hands. Amy, seated beside her doing homework, occasionally looked up to smile at the happiness of her adoptive niece. "I still can't believe you got a full scholarship," Emma commented, proud. "Well, having an influential godfather helps," Amy joked, referring to James, who had insisted on supporting her studies as soon as he learned of her situation. "You earned it on your own merit," a male voice corrected behind them. James came out to the porch, carrying his own cup of coffee. He sat beside Emma, his arm automatically finding its place around her. "How was the meeting?" she asked, noticing he seemed more relaxed than usual. "Surprisingly good," he replied. "The board unanimously approved the new project." Emma smiled, knowing how much that meant. The project in question was an educational foundation created in Hannah's memory that would offer scholarships to underprivileged children. "Daddy!" Lily's shout interrupted the conversation. "Come see, there's a bird's nest here." James stood up, but before going to his daughter, he leaned down to kiss Emma softly. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips. "For what?" "For teaching me to live again." Emma watched him walk to Lily, who immediately began explaining animatedly about the birds. Father and daughter bent down together to look at the nest, their heads close, identical smiles on their faces. "They look happy," Amy commented. "All of you do." "We are," Emma answered simply. And it was true. It hadn't been easy. It still wasn't sometimes. There were days when James withdrew, days when Lily cried for her mother, days when the shadows of the past seemed darker. But there were also mornings like this, full of light and laughter. There were nights of bedtime stories, with Lily nestled between them. There were quiet moments in the library, each absorbed in their own book, but together. Ruth crossed the garden, carrying a tray with freshly baked cookies. "Mrs. Victoria called," she informed casually. Emma felt James tense even at a distance. "What did she want?" he asked, his voice controlled. "To ask if she can visit Lily on her birthday next month," Ruth answered. "Said she's been in therapy, that she's learning." James looked at Emma, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. The decision was his, but she would support any choice. "Tell her," he began, watching Lily play, "that she can come for lunch, 1 hour only, and that we need to establish some ground rules first." Ruth smiled, satisfied. "I'll pass along the message." That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, not without making James tell 3 stories and Emma sing 2 songs, they stayed on the bedroom balcony, observing the city. "Are you sure about my mother?" James asked, embracing Emma from behind. "I'm sure you're doing the right thing," she replied, leaning back against him. "Lily deserves to know her grandmother, and your mother deserves the chance to change, like I deserved." Emma turned in his arms, looking into his eyes. "You were always different. You just needed to remember how to love." He kissed her then, a slow and deep kiss, full of promises and certainties. "Did you know it was in this very spot that Hannah told me she was pregnant?" he commented afterward, still embracing. She said life sometimes gives us second chances, that love always finds its way back. She was wise, Emma smiled. She was, James agreed. And she would be happy to see her family like this, complete, again. From the next room came Lily's sleepy-voiced girl. Emma, Daddy, are you still awake? They looked at each other, smiling. Some things never changed. We're coming, little star, Emma responded. As they walked hand in hand to the girls' room, Emma thought about how life could be surprising, how a job interview could lead to a great love, how a family could be rebuilt piece by piece with patience and care. On Lily's nightstand, Hannah's photo smiled serenely. Beside it, a new photo showed the girl between Emma and James, all laughing at something no one else could see. 2 images, 2 love stories, 1 family. And above them, through the window of the room, the stars shined, silent witnesses to how love, true and patient, always finds its way back home.